China do have some interest in Syria because right now one of the rebel force that was like the spearhead for the push to Damascus is the Turkestan Islamic Party, which is composed
Uyghurs.
of mostly Uyghurs
Yep.
from China. And so from the time period from 2012 to 2015, this was when this is the timeline that Seymour Hersh reported on, when U.S., Turkey, NATO, they ran rat line to send all the jihadis from Libya and also from Europe to Syria to topple Assad. But there's another rat line that goes to send these Uyghurs to Syria. This was actually reported by Associated Press back in 2018. So what happened was these Uyghurs were leaving China, and they go, but the Chinese border around Central Asia in Xinjiang was locked down. But the Chinese border in the south with Southeast Asia was relatively porous because it has been peaceful. But the Uyghurs, being Chinese citizens, they can travel anywhere in the country. So they will take a train to take a high-speed train from Xinjiang to southwest China. In a couple of hours, will arrive at the border in the southwest, where the border is relatively porous with Myanmar, with Laos, Vietnam, etc. If you dig in reports around 2012, 2014, at that time period, you will see reports of U.S. diplomatic battles with China on what to do with these detained Uyghurs who were caught crossing border illegally into Southeast Asian countries like Vietnam, Laos, Cambodia, Thailand, and even Indonesia. And United States urged them these countries not to repatriate these Uyghurs back to China, where U.S. say they will face persecution. Instead, any Uyghurs who made their way to Malaysia, to the Malaysian capital, Kuala Lumpur, when they go to the Turkish consulate, Turkish embassy, they're provided with quote unquote fake Turkish passport, which allow them to board a plane from Malaysia to fly to Turkey. And as soon as they step off the airplane at the Istanbul airport, their quote unquote fake Turkish passport get taken away, and they're met with jihadi recruiters who send them straight to Syria. And this is how thousands of Uyghur fighters have been holed up in Idlib. And there are various reports on the numbers, and most of the report estimate is about 5,000 fighters, but together with their family, maybe 20,000 Uyghurs. I saw and I saw their propaganda videos very recently of these Uyghur fighters returning to Idlib. They're welcomed by their large family. So I mean, it's plausible. 5,000 fighters plus their family, 20,000 Uyghur total is quite possible. So this is present a problem. This is also going to be a problem with whatever new Syrian government in the relationship with China, because Jolani, the new ruler of Damascus, have just announced that they're thinking about granting citizenship to all the foreign fighters who fought for New Syria, and they said that. Yeah. They say they're thinking about granting Syrian citizenship to anyone who lived in Syria for 5 years. So that will include these Uyghur fighters who help the rebranded Al Qaeda's push into Damascus, because the Turkish Islamic Party is affiliated with Al Qaeda. There are Al Qaeda branch. In fact, the Turkestan Islamic Party's head was sitting on Al Qaeda's High Shura Council. So these are well known to United States, but they pretend not to understand. In fact, Pompeo, before he stepped down during the first Trump term, what he did was he took the Turkestan Islamic Party off the terrorist list. so there's that issue that China and whatever new government in Syria will have to contend with. And then it's also the matter of international recognition. China will not do business with any government that's not being recognized internationally. But well, there are exceptions. There are exceptions. Taliban, Taliban is probably the closest, it's the only exception that I think of but that's because Afghanistan is a neighbor, you know, and Taliban they are the government in Afghanistan now, so China have to deal with them. But Syria is a quite different matter because Syria is not a neighbor, and I think China is just waiting to see how the fallout of the collapse of the Syrian government is going to turn out.
One of the interesting things about the Uyghurs, they're saying that they're going to go back to China now that they've gotten all of this battle experience, that they've been fighting, and that they've liberated, quote unquote, Syria, that China is next. For all of those people who were talking about this genocide of the Uyghurs, and China was making this argument like, look, these people have been radicalized, and we have to do something to deprogram the people who are radicals in this country. And this was the way they went about trying to deal with that. Like if you had somebody in America, for example, let's say like Nazis, and you needed to somehow get those people to not be Nazis, how do you do that? You can kill them. Okay, but let's say you don't want to kill your own citizenry. So what do you do? That's the issue, right? We put people in prison all the time for committing crimes, and those prisons are horrible locations. Now, I don't necessarily know what the Uyghurs are living in, but everything that I've heard.
You know what the European country's solution for de-radicalization is? They sent them to Syria and Iraq to join ISIS. I mean,
There's
all these European bodies, all of them have been under surveillance by MI6 and other European intelligence agency for years. This comes out after like a terrorist attack in Europe, for example. Then they realize, oh, these guys have been on watch list for years, and these guys, so they just allow them. I mean, I don't think it's more. I think it's more than turning a blind eye, because they're actually actively sending jihadis, for example, from Libya to Syria. I mean, they are, if anything, they will probably facilitated these guys travel to Syria and.
I don't doubt it. I mean, Giuliani still has a $10 million bounty on his head by the U.S. And so it's like, and I remember somebody asked, so what? They don't know where he is as he's overthrowing the government of Syria? It's like, certainly they're aware of where he is, what he's doing, and more likely than not, an asset of the U.S.-Turkish, proxy war on Syria. So no, I don't disagree with you on that. I guess my thing is, let me ask it this way. What are the conditions that the Uyghurs are in China? I don't believe for a moment it's a genocide, so I don't buy that.
So
I suspect it's
that giant genocide is a hoax. I mean, people can see what's happening in Gaza. That's a genocide. I mean, where are the videos of China bombing cities in Xinjiang? Where are the videos of refugee camps around China's borders? It's because that's what happens in a genocide. You're going to see massive refugees flooding everywhere. You're going to see this is 2024. You're going to have videos leaking out no matter what. What happened was China went through this de-radicalization program for the radicalized Uyghurs, and by 2019, Chinese government actually announced they have closed down all the de-radicalization camps. Nobody's in camps anymore. And this was reported by New York Times, Washington Post, but they cast their skepticism. They're like, oh, well, allegedly Chinese government said that. But in every other media, people are still talking they're still talking about millions of Uyghurs being genocided in the concentration camps. Today, life in Xinjiang is returning to normal because China had probably one of the most successful de-radicalization programs. Initially, they did have de-radicalization camps. The goal was always to return these people to society. It's not to quarantine. It's not just to quarantine them and to let them rot in jail. It's to de-radicalize them, but also to train them, give them job skills, so when they come out, they can be productive citizens. And this is where the U.S. sanctions kicks in, and that's when U.S. have now sanctioning on any product that's coming in Xinjiang that employs any Uyghur labor, because they're claiming any Uyghurs working in China is a slave labor, is a slave. Right. So we cannot have slave labor. So that's why the U.S. custom is investing a lot of money to investigate whether textile are using Xinjiang cotton, for example. They're trying to pressure all the Western companies to close down their supply chain, to move their supply chain away from Xinjiang. And it's also used as an excuse to sanction Chinese-made solar products, because a lot of Chinese-made solar panels, they're made in Xinjiang, because Xinjiang has big desert, has a lot of sand, and but it's all that this all shaped up to the U.S. sanction on China later. I mean, first it was they used as an excuse to for the human rights ground. They claim China is using slave labor. China is claiming that U.S. is claiming that China is using slave labor to pick cotton in Xinjiang, because this is 100% projection, right? I mean, because U.S. its own history with slaves working the cotton field, and
yes.
and even today, U.S. prison system is a large slave labor camp. And
excuse me, Carl. I hate to interrupt this, but it's 8 cents to slave labor. I think they pay them 8 cents an hour or something like that. I'm sorry. I just wanted to correct that is 8 cents away from slavery.
Yeah. Thank you. And so this is a lot of projection, but people buy it because people know about U.S. They know all these kind of shitty things that happened in U.S. history, and then they just say, oh yeah, it's also happening in China because China bad, of course. This is how the info war, propaganda war works: is to convince people there's really no alternative to the U.S. system. U.S. system may be bad, but China is even worse. Don't think there's an alternative to what you got. What we have is the best we can do for you guys. And so in other words, right now there's so many. China is open, by the way. If you have a valid Chinese visa, you can visit Xinjiang region. You don't need a special permit to travel to Xinjiang. So now, if you go to YouTube, you actually see a lot of vloggers who are now traveling to Xinjiang, documenting what they see, and not just Western vloggers. You have vloggers from the Arab world, from Southeast Asia. You have Indonesian Muslims traveling to Xinjiang. You have Indian vloggers traveling to Xinjiang. You can find everything on YouTube. And this is why they even try to shut down that avenue of information. Now you have mainstream media saying, oh, these vloggers, they're all just helping propagating, pushing communist propaganda, And this is also why United States, for some time, they slapped China with a level 3 warning on travel, placing China on the same level as Ethiopia, a country that's in active civil war, right?
Yeah.
And recently they quietly dialed down to travel, there's a warning to level 2, but it's still kind of ridiculous. China is one of the most safest country to travel to, and as I mentioned, there's no restriction on traveler going to Xinjiang. So all you need is a Chinese visa, and China made coming to China very easy in 2024. So for most of the European countries, EU countries, now they get 30 days visa-free travel to China. But for Americans and British, for people in UK who don't get that visa-free travel, now there's a 10-day transit, visa-free transit travel. So if you're flying to China and then go to a third country, you get to stay in China 10 days visa-free. And previously it was only restricted to certain to one city that you could visit, but now they took out away the restrictions, so you can travel freely within China for those 10 days, provided you are leaving at the end of the 10 days to another third country. And so this is, so people can go see for themselves what's going on in Xinjiang. If you really want to know, if people are really dying to know what's happening in Uyghur in Xinjiang, buy a ticket, go to Xinjiang, see it for yourself, because seeing is believing.
That reminds me of the guy who was flat earther, and they were running free tests, not tests, but they were running free trips to the Antarctica so they could see, basically, like, dude, if you're right, the sun is not going to do what it's doing here. And every so often you get somebody who the wool fall from their eyes. They're like, oh my God, I was wrong all of these years about there being a flat earth. Well, that is, the flat earth thing is kind of the bottom of the barrel to me, but it puts me in mind of something similar where you can go, you can see it for yourself and see what it is. Also, we've lost a huge amount of credibility on this notion of genocide, considering what we're allowing in Israel. How did they go about re-educating it? Because I had the same question for like Nazis, or if we're talking about, let's say, in Afghanistan or some of the Wahhabi schools. How would they go about rehabilitating or re-educating?
So first of all, it is compulsory. They had to go. It was not. They weren't giving a choice. Okay, so that there was compulsory feature of it. But when they go to the de-radicalization camp, they are mostly importantly they're giving job training, and because China, the Chinese government, they function from like the kind of the Marxist understanding of how everything is based on economics, right? So China is the economy, stupid, right?
Yeah.
And so they focus on, they think that it's because the poverty that breeds terrorism and radicalization. So their solution is to give people jobs, to give people training, so they will have jobs, and by economically developing the region, so to remove the soil for radicalization and terrorism. So that's one aspect, and the other aspect is through education, because there was a lot of there were many issues in Xinjiang before. One of the issue was because kind of especially a lot of these jihadist elements were coming back from Afghanistan after the Soviet withdrawal. Some Uyghurs traveled to Pakistan, and then they ended up in all these religious madrasas where they got radicalized, and then they went to Afghanistan to fight the Soviet. And some of these Uyghur Mujahideen came back in the 90s in Xinjiang, where they try to spread their extremist ideology. And so the education part is to counter that, the radicalization part. So one part education, one part job training, and this whole de-radicalization program lasted about 1 year or a year and a half time. And so at the end, the people are the government provided them with jobs. The people who were trained in this de-radicalization in camps, when they came out, when they acquired the skill, they were given jobs. And this is where what the U.S. is saying, slave labor. They say, okay, this cannot be voluntary because it's government assigned, so there's state coercion, so there must be slave labor. One of the reasons the government has helped them assign to get jobs is because rather than they have to face the job competition in a free market scenario where people might not be comfortable hiring people who came straight out of the radicalization program, and this is why the Chinese government was working with the companies, private companies, giving them tax incentive to hire these Uyghurs who came out of the de-radicalization camps. This is what's labeled as slave labor practice by the U.S. State Department. Again, the sanction serves one goal. The sanction is just like the sanction on Syria. It was designed to collapse the Syrian economy. The sanction on Xinjiang and all the products made in Xinjiang is so those Uyghurs would not have jobs. So they will be stuck in poverty. So there will be discontent. Then there will be rise up and demanding regime change. That's the logic of sanction. But luckily China has large enough internal market, domestic market, that it can absorb all the products produced by Xinjiang without, unlike the case of Syria, where the economy was seriously affected by the Caesar sack.